Hello and welcome to my channel, not in Kansas anymore. And today I'm going to wrap up my educational series. Over the past few videos, we've been breaking down the U.S. educational system and what's going wrong and what it would take to fix it. But here's the thing I keep coming back to. Every solution, every single one sounds really good until you look at it and you look at the long-term effects. In the first video, we looked at why the system is falling behind. It's not because the people don't care, but because the structure itself isn't keeping up. It's outdated. In the second video, we looked at reform that could change funding, but also asked the question, does money alone actually fix the outcomes? In the third, we broke down the rest of the policy and how complicated real reform actually is. And then you put it all together and a pattern starts to show up. So what would a real attempt at reform actually look like? The policy we've been looking at tries to tackle it from multiple parts. All at once. It sets national standards in core subjects, so students across the country are held to the same expectations. It shifts toward a more equal per student funding model, so where you live matters less than it does now. It invests in teachers with better training, clearer certification standards, and higher pay. And it pushes for coordination between the states instead of 50 completely different systems trying to solve the same problem. On paper, this is the kind of approach that actually matches the scale of the problem. But here's the issue. Most education reform focuses on one thing: more funding, newer standards, better accountability. But education isn't a one variable problem. It's a system where incentive, structure, and implementation all interact. And if you change one part without changing the others, the system simply pulls itself back to where we are now. That's why reform looks great on paper and then falls apart in reality. Because changing funding doesn't guarantee better outcomes. Designing policies doesn't mean it works the way you expect. And every reform comes with trade-offs. Some we don't talk about, and definitely some we don't like. But there's another piece of this that doesn't get talked about enough. Even if a policy like this could work, that doesn't mean it actually gets implemented the way it's designed. Because real reform doesn't run into complexity. It runs into resistance. The biggest pushback would likely come from the states themselves, because this plan introduces national standards, which our current system does not have, national certifications expectations, again, which our current system doesn't have, and a more centralized funding model, for a lot of states, that starts to feel like overreach and loss of control. Another area of pushback would be from wealthier districts. Right now, the school funding is heavily tied to local property taxes, which means some areas can spend far more per student than others. Moving to a more equalized funding model sounds fair, but it also means redistributing resources. And that's where resistance gets real. The last place that it would face challenges would be from the teachers themselves and their union. Higher pay and better support would probably be popular, but stricter certification standards and longer training pipelines would create short-term pushback, especially where teachers are already in short supply. And then there's the politics. Because of course, everything in America is political. The national standards, especially in civics and history, almost always run into debates about what should be taught and how it should be taught. And finally, the cost. Expanding federal funding for universal pre-K, higher teacher pay, that's a major investment. But the money's always there for war, or if we need to increase a certain department's budget, but our children seem to get left behind. So to close, I'm not sure this policy is the answer. I don't know that any of the policies I've presented on my channel are. And it sounds good on paper. But it has to survive the political pressure, the economic trade-offs, and the resistance from the system itself. Which is why real change, if it happens at all, isn't going to happen overnight. It would mean rethinking the entire system at a deeper level. How schools are funded, how success is measured, and what incentives we're actually creating. Because the real issue isn't that we don't have the ideas or the ability to do it. It's that we keep trying to fix a complex system with very simple solutions. And until that changes, we're probably going to keep having this same conversation about our educational system. Now, if you've been following this series, I'm curious. What do you actually think needs to change? And do you think this policy has merit? I vote yes. I think it does. Would it face stiff pushback? Obviously. But our students being undereducated is unacceptable. And that's it for my video series on education. If you find any relevance to you or any value in the videos that I do, please like, share, and subscribe. And we'll see you in a week where we start into healthcare. That'll be fun. Goodbye for now.